My children abandoned me when I got sick, so I left them penniless, you know. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that sometimes blood runs cold when money's on the line. My name is Margaret, and I'm 73 years old. What I'm about to tell you changed everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and what really matters when you're facing the end of your life. If you've ever felt abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you most, this story might hit close to home. And if you're someone who's only sticking around for an inheritance, well, you might want to listen carefully to what happened next. It started 3 years ago, on a Tuesday morning that felt like any other Tuesday. I was making my coffee, the same Maxwell House blend I'd been drinking for 40 years, when my hands started shaking, not the gentle tremor of old age, but something different. Something that made the ceramic mug slip right through my fingers and shatter on my kitchen floor. The sound echoed through my empty house, and I remember thinking how that broken mug was going to be a sign of things to come. The doctor's appointment 2 weeks later confirmed what I already suspected deep down: Parkinson's disease. The words hung in the air like smoke, and I watched Dr. Peterson's mouth moving, explaining symptoms and treatments and timelines, but all I could think about was my late husband Robert and how he used to steady my hands when I was nervous. Robert had been gone for 8 years by then, and suddenly I felt more alone than ever. I called my children that same afternoon. First Jennifer, my eldest, who lived just 20 minutes away in her pristine suburban house with her husband Brad and their 2 teenage kids. "Mom, that's really serious," she said, and I could hear her clicking her computer mouse in the background, probably shopping online or scrolling through Facebook while I delivered the worst news of my life. "We'll have to talk about this later. I'm really swamped with Emma's soccer schedule and Dylan's college applications." Then I called Michael, my middle child, who'd moved to Denver for his tech job and rarely called unless he needed something. "Parkinson's. Wow, Mom, that's rough, but hey, they have really good treatments these days, right? Listen, I'm about to hop on a conference call with Tokyo, but we'll definitely figure something out." Finally, I called my youngest, Sarah, who'd always been my baby girl, the one who used to crawl into my lap when she had nightmares and promised she'd take care of me when I got old. "Oh, Mom," she said, and for a moment I thought I heard genuine concern in her voice. "That's so scary, but you're strong, you know. You'll beat this. Anyway, I should go. Marcus is making dinner, and you know how he gets when the pasta gets overcooked." 3 phone calls, 3 of my children, 3 versions of "That's nice, Mom, but I'm busy right now." That night, I sat in Robert's old recliner and cried until I had no tears left. The house felt enormous around me, filled with 45 years of memories and the echo of children's laughter that had long since faded. I looked at the family photos covering the mantel, all those Christmas mornings and birthday parties and graduations where I was always the one behind the camera, making sure everyone looked perfect, making sure everyone was happy. The first few months after the diagnosis weren't too bad. I could still drive myself to appointments, still manage my daily routine with just minor adjustments. I installed grab bars in the bathroom and bought one of those pill organizers with the days of the week labeled in big letters. I told myself I was being proactive, independent, the same strong woman who'd raised 3 children mostly on her own while Robert worked 60-hour weeks building his construction business. But Parkinson's doesn't ask for your permission to get worse. By month 6, my handwriting had become an illegible scrawl, and I'd fallen twice in my own house. Once hitting my head on the coffee table hard enough to leave a bruise that lasted 3 weeks. I started leaving more frequent voicemails for my children, not asking for help exactly, but hoping they'd read between the lines. "Hi Jennifer, it's Mom, just calling to say hi. I had a little stumble today, nothing serious, but it got me thinking about maybe having someone check on me once in a while. Call me back when you get a chance." No return call. "Michael, honey, it's your mom. I know you're busy, but I was wondering if you might be able to visit sometime soon. The house feels so quiet, and I'd love to see you. Maybe we could go through some of your father's old things together." No return call. "Sarah, sweetheart, it's Mom. I miss you so much. I was thinking maybe you and Marcus could come for dinner this weekend. I'll make that pot roast you used to love, if my hands cooperate. Let me know." No return call. The silence was deafening, but what came next was even worse. After month 8, when I'd had to stop driving because my reflexes were too slow and my depth perception was getting fuzzy, the phone calls finally started coming. but they weren't the calls I'd been hoping for. "Mom, we need to talk about your finances," Jennifer said during one of our rare conversations. "Brad and I have been thinking about Emma's college fund, and with Dylan right behind her, we're really stretched thin. I know Dad left you pretty well set up, but maybe you could help us out a little bit. We've been looking at houses." Michael told me during a surprise visit that lasted exactly 45 minutes. "Property values in Denver are insane, Mom. A decent 4-bedroom is going for almost $1 million. I was thinking, you've got all this equity just sitting here in a house that's way too big for you. Maybe it's time to downsize." Sarah was the most direct. "Mom, I love you, but let's be realistic. You can't live alone much longer. Marcus and I found this really nice assisted living place about an hour away. It's not cheap, but it would be perfect for you. And honestly, it would free up some resources that could really help our family right now. Marcus is thinking about starting his own business. Resources, equity, college funds, business ventures. My children weren't calling to ask how I was feeling or whether I needed help with groceries or if I was scared about what was happening to my body. They were calling to discuss my money. If you're watching this and you have elderly parents, please take a moment after this video to call them, not to ask for anything, not to discuss their will or their finances, but just to tell them you love them. Trust me, it matters more than you know." That breaking point came on my 71st birthday. I'd always been the kind of mother who made birthdays special. Homemade cakes, carefully chosen gifts, family dinners that went late into the evening with everyone laughing and sharing stories. I'd spent decades making sure my children felt celebrated and loved on their special days. That Tuesday morning, I woke up with a flutter of anticipation despite everything. Surely they'd remember. Surely my birthday would be different. I put on my favorite blue dress, the one Robert always said brought out my eyes, and I waited. The day passed in complete silence. No calls, no visits, no cards in the mail. At 8 o'clock that evening, I finally called Jennifer myself. "Oh my God, Mom, was that today?" she said, and I could hear her kids arguing in the background about whose turn it was to take out the trash. "I'm so sorry, this week has been absolutely crazy. Dylan had a college interview, and Emma had a school project due, and I just completely lost track of the days. Completely lost track. 71 years old, battling a degenerative disease, and my own daughter had completely lost track of my birthday." That night, sitting alone with a store-bought cupcake and a single candle I'd lit for myself, I made a decision that would change everything. I opened my laptop, the one Michael had set up for me years ago and taught me to use for email and online shopping, and I started researching estate planning attorneys. The Parkinson's was progressing faster than anyone had expected. By year 2, I needed a walker to get around safely, and simple tasks like buttoning my shirts or opening jars had become monumental challenges. I'd hired a part-time caregiver named Rosa, a sweet woman from Guatemala who treated me with more kindness and patience than my own children had shown me in years. But Rosa was expensive, and even with my comfortable savings and Robert's life insurance, I could see the numbers getting tighter each month. I started leaving more urgent messages from my children, explaining that I needed help not just with money, but with decisions about my care, about the house, about my future. The responses were always the same. "We need to think about this logically, Mom. Let's not make any hasty decisions. We'll figure something out soon." But soon never came, and their visits became even more infrequent. Always timed around discussions about selling the house or moving me somewhere cheaper. It was during one of these conversations, about 18 months ago, that I finally understood what was happening. Jennifer was sitting at my kitchen table with a stack of papers and her laptop, typing furiously while explaining why moving to a state-funded facility might be my best option. "The thing is, Mom, we all have our own financial pressures right now. Emma's going to need about $30,000 a year for college, and that's just tuition. Michael's been carrying a lot of debt from his divorce, and Sarah and Marcus are trying to buy their first house. We can't really afford to supplement your care indefinitely." Supplement my care. As if taking care of their sick mother was some kind of business expense they were graciously considering. "What about just visiting?" I asked quietly. "What about just spending time with me? I'm not asking you to pay for anything. I just want to see my children." Jennifer looked up from her laptop for the first time in 20 minutes. "Mom, we visit. We're here now. This is the first time I've seen you in 6 weeks, and you've spent the entire hour trying to convince me to sell my house. We're trying to help you be practical. You're trying to help yourselves to my money. The words hung between us like a challenge, and Jennifer's face flushed red. That's not fair, Mom. That's not what this is about. But we both knew it was exactly what it was about. That evening, after Jennifer left without even saying goodbye properly, I called my estate attorney, Thomas Brennan, a man who'd helped Robert and me with our wills years earlier. Tom, I said, I need to make some changes. Let me pause here and ask you something. Have you ever felt invisible to the people who are supposed to love you most? Have you ever realized that your primary value to someone is what you might leave behind when you're gone? If you have, please leave a comment below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these experiences makes all the difference. The hardest part wasn't making the decision to change my will. The hardest part was accepting that I had to. For months, I kept hoping things would change. I kept thinking that maybe if I got sicker, if I became more obviously helpless, my children would remember who they used to be. The Jennifer who used to make me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day with burnt toast and runny eggs that I ate with a smile because she'd made it with love. The Michael who used to call me every Sunday night during college just to hear my voice and tell me about his week. The Sarah who used to say she wanted to marry someone exactly like her daddy and live next door to me forever. But those children were gone, replaced by adults who saw me as a problem to be solved, an asset to be managed, a responsibility to be minimized. The new will was simple. Everything I owned, the house, the savings accounts, the investments Robert had carefully built over decades of hard work, would go to charity. I chose organizations that reflected the values Robert and I had tried to instill in our children: the local children's hospital where we'd volunteered for years, the food bank where we'd helped serve Thanksgiving dinners to families in need, the scholarship fund at the community college where Robert had taken night classes to improve himself. I didn't stop there. I wanted my children to understand exactly why they were inheriting nothing, so I wrote letters, individual letters to each of them, explaining how their actions had made me feel, describing the loneliness of being abandoned by your own family when you need them most, and detailing every missed birthday, every unreturned phone call, every conversation that had focused on money instead of love. I sealed those letters with instructions to Tom that they should be delivered immediately after my funeral, along with copies of the new will. But here's where the story takes a turn that even I didn't expect. About 6 months ago, my condition took a sudden turn for the worse. What had been manageable tremors became violent shaking spells. What had been occasional falls became daily struggles to stay upright. Rosa started coming every day instead of just 3 times a week. And even then, I could see the worry in her eyes. Dr. Peterson recommended round-the-clock care, which meant either moving to a facility or hiring live-in help. Both options were expensive, more expensive than I'd anticipated. And for the first time since my diagnosis, I started to worry about money. That's when something surprising happened. My children started calling more frequently, visiting more often, asking more detailed questions about my health and my daily care. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought maybe the reality of losing me had finally broken through their financial calculations and reminded them that I was their mother, not just their inheritance. I was wrong. Mom, we've been talking, Michael said during a family meeting they'd arranged at my house. The first time all 3 of them had been in the same room in over 2 years. We know things are getting more expensive, and we want to help. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. We've each agreed to contribute $1,000 a month toward your care. Sarah smiled that sweet smile I remembered from her childhood. We love you, Mom, and we want to make sure you have everything you need. $3,000 a month. It was a generous offer, more than I'd expected from children who'd claimed they couldn't afford to help at all. But as I listened to them explain their plan, I realized what had changed. They weren't offering to help out of love. They were making an investment. This way you won't have to liquidate any of your assets, Jennifer explained. You can keep the house, keep your savings intact, and we'll handle the care costs. Keep my assets intact, for them to inherit. And honestly, Michael added, it makes sense from a tax perspective too. This way, the estate stays whole for, well, you know, for the future. For the future. For their future. Sarah leaned forward and took my shaking hand in hers. We should have done this sooner, Mom. We should have been better about staying in touch. But we're here now, and we're going to take care of everything. If you're someone who's been absent from a parent's life, and you're suddenly motivated to reconnect because of inheritance concerns, let me tell you something. It's too late. The damage is done. The time for genuine relationship was before they got sick, before they got scared, before they started wondering if anyone would miss them when they're gone. I accepted their offer, but not for the reasons they thought. I accepted it because I wanted to see how long their newfound devotion would last. When they realized they weren't getting what they expected, the answer was 3 months. By month 3, the calls started coming less frequently again. Mom, I hate to bring this up, but Emma's college orientation is coming up, and we need to pay for her dorm room. Mom, Marcus and I found the perfect house, but we need to move fast on the down payment. Mom, my car died and I really need something reliable for work. One by one, they started asking for advances on their monthly contributions, emergency loans against their investment in my care, family emergencies that always seemed to coincide with family expenses. By month 6, Jennifer had missed 2 payments entirely. I'm so sorry, Mom, but Dylan's tuition went up and Brad's overtime got cut. Michael had reduced his contribution to $500, just temporarily, Mom, until this client pays their invoice. Sarah had stopped contributing altogether but was still visiting regularly, always with new updates about her adventures and how expensive everything was. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd offered to support my care to protect their inheritance, but they couldn't actually afford to support my care, which meant they were counting on inheriting my money to pay them back for the money they'd spent on me. It was a financial house of cards built on the assumption that I owed them a return on their investment in keeping me alive. That's when I decided it was time for them to learn the truth. I called another family meeting, just like the one where they'd announced their generous support plan. This time, I had Tom Brennan join us via video call to make everything official and legal. I have an announcement to make, I said, sitting in Robert's old chair with my hands folded carefully in my lap to minimize the shaking. I want you all to know that I've made some changes to my estate planning, and I thought you should hear about them directly from me. The room went very quiet. Jennifer closed her laptop. Michael put down his phone. Sarah stopped fidgeting with her purse. As you know, your father and I always planned to leave everything to you 3. The house, the savings, all of it. That was our intention for over 40 years. I could see them relaxing slightly, probably thinking I was about to announce some minor administrative change. However, over the past 3 years, I've learned some very important things about family, about love, and about what really matters. At the end of life, I've learned that I raised 3 children who see me as a bank account rather than a mother. I've learned that the only time you call is when you want something. I've learned that my birthday matters less to you than your cell phone bills, and my health matters less to you than your vacation plans. Jennifer started to interrupt, but I held up my trembling hand. I've learned that when I offered you the chance to simply spend time with me, to have conversations that weren't about money, to be present in my life as I face a degenerative disease, you chose to stay busy with your own lives. And I've learned that when I finally did need financial help, your assistance came with strings attached and expectations of repayment through inheritance. Michael was staring at me with his mouth slightly open. Sarah's eyes were filling with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were tears of remorse or panic. So I've made a decision. Everything your father and I built, everything we saved, everything we planned to leave you, is now going to charity. The house, the bank accounts, the investments, all of it. You will inherit nothing. The silence that followed was deafening. Then everyone started talking at once. Mom, you can't be serious. This is crazy. You're not thinking clearly. The disease is affecting your judgment. We can contest this. You're being manipulated by someone. But Tom's voice cut through the chaos. Mrs. Williams is of completely sound mind, and this will has been properly executed with multiple witnesses. It's ironclad. Jennifer stood up so fast her chair fell over. This is insane. Mom, we've been paying for your care for months. We've been there for you. You've been investing in an inheritance that you assumed was guaranteed. There's a difference. We love you, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face now. We've always loved you. Then why did it take a terminal diagnosis for you to call? Why did every conversation have to be about money? Why couldn't you just be my children instead of my heirs? Michael ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I remembered from when he was little and frustrated. Okay, Mom, let's say we screwed up. Let's say we should have been better. We can fix this. We can do better starting right now. It's too late for that, Michael. The time to be better was 3 years ago when I called to tell you I was sick. The time to be better was when I fell in my own house and sat on the floor for 20 minutes because I couldn't get up and had no one to call. The time to be better was on my birthday when I waited all day for any of you to remember that you had a mother. The meeting ended with Jennifer storming out, Michael threatening legal action, and Sarah begging me to reconsider. But I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. That was 8 months ago. Since then, my children have tried everything. They've attempted the guilt approach, reminding me of their childhoods and how much they used to love me. They've tried the anger approach, accusing me of being vindictive and cruel. They've tried the negotiation approach, offering to spend more time with me in exchange for reversing my decision. But here's what they've never tried. They've never tried just being my children without an agenda. They've never stopped by just to sit with me and watch old movies. They've never called just to ask how I'm feeling without following up with a request or a complaint. They've never apologized for the years of neglect without immediately asking for forgiveness that comes with inheritance, reinstatement. What they don't understand is that this was never about punishment. This was about finally being honest about what our relationship had become. They stopped seeing me as a person worth loving and started seeing me as a bank account worth inheriting. So I stopped pretending that money was love and started treating money like what it actually was: my money, to give to causes I believed in, to organizations that would use it to help people without expecting anything in return. I know some of you watching this might think I'm being too harsh. Maybe you're thinking that family is family, that forgiveness is important, that I should give them another chance, and maybe in some other story, with some other family, that would be the right answer. But here's what I want you to understand. I spent 3 years begging for scraps of attention from my own children. I spent 3 years hoping that if I just explained my needs clearly enough, if I just made it easy enough for them to help, if I just stopped asking for too much, they might remember that they loved me. I spent 3 years shrinking myself down to fit into the small space they were willing to give me in their lives. The new will wasn't about revenge, it was about self-respect. As I'm recording this, I'm in the final stages of my disease. My hands shake constantly now, my speech is often slurred, and I need help with almost everything. But you know what? I'm not alone. Rosa is here every day, treating me with kindness and dignity. I have nurses who know my name and ask about my day. I have volunteer visitors from the church who read to me and share stories about their own families. I have Tom, who checks on me regularly, not because he's being paid to, but because over the years of handling my legal affairs, we've become genuine friends. I have Dr. Peterson, who still takes time to explain things carefully and always asks if I have questions. I have a community of people who see me as Margaret, not as a means to an end. My children still visit occasionally, and I'm always glad to see them, even though I know their motivations. Jennifer brings her kids sometimes, and it breaks my heart to see how much they've grown and how little I know about their lives. Michael tells me about his work, and I remember how proud I used to be of his ambition and drive. Sarah still has that smile that used to light up my whole world, even though now it feels practiced and desperate. I love them. I will always love them. But I've finally learned the difference between loving someone and allowing them to treat you badly because you love them. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in my children's behavior, it's not too late to change course. Call your parents, visit them, ask about their day, their health, their worries, their memories. Don't wait until they're gone to wish you'd been a better son or daughter. And if you're watching this, and you recognize yourself in my situation, know that you deserve better. You deserve to be loved for who you are, not for what you can provide. You deserve children who see you as a person worth cherishing, not an asset worth managing. The money I'm leaving to charity will help sick children get better medical care. It will provide meals for hungry families. It will give educational opportunities to young people who remind me of who my children used to be before they grew up and forgot what really matters. That money will continue to spread love and kindness in the world long after I'm gone. And honestly, that feels like a much better legacy than enabling 3 adults who never learned the difference between loving someone and using someone. As for me, I'm at peace with my decision. When I close my eyes for the last time, I'll be thinking about Robert and how he taught me that real love is about being present, being patient, being willing to sacrifice for someone else's happiness without expecting anything in return. I'll be thinking about the grandchildren I barely know but still hope will learn these lessons somehow. I'll be thinking about all the good that my money will do in the hands of people who understand that helping others is its own reward. My children will be shocked when they read my letters after the funeral. They'll be angry, they'll be hurt, they'll probably say terrible things about me to anyone who will listen. But maybe, someday, when they're older and facing their own mortality, they'll understand that the greatest inheritance I could have given them wasn't money. It was the lesson that love isn't something you can withdraw from when convenient and invest in when profitable. Love is something you give freely, without expecting returns, without keeping score, without treating the people you care about like financial assets. I hope they learn that lesson with their own children. I hope they break the cycle. I didn't realize I'd started by protecting them too much from life's hardships, by making everything too easy, by never teaching them that taking care of family is a privilege, not an obligation with benefits. But whether they learn it or not, I'll rest easy knowing that I finally learned to value myself enough to stop accepting less than I deserved, even from my own children. If this story has touched you, if it's made you think about your own family relationships, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you think someone in your life needs to hear this message, please share it with them. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is tell difficult truths. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you remember that every person deserves to be loved for who they are, not for what they can give. And remember, it's never too late to be better, but it's also never too late to demand better. Take care of each other, and please, call your parents,